What's up, everybody? And today we're doing something a little bit different. This is why you never got to fly on the American Concorde, the 2707 SST story. This is by Mustard, one of the best channels on YouTube for military aircraft. But obviously, this isn't a military aircraft. This is something a little bit different. Thought I'd have some fun today and check out the Concorde. I don't know much about it, but I've heard it so many times. And it'll be interesting to see why it got discontinued. I'm pretty sure the reason it got discontinued was something to do with it being too fast and it would like stretch as it would fly or something weird like that. But we're gonna find out. I got recommended this quite a lot on Discord through DMs. So yeah, let's watch it, let's have some fun, and let's learn all about it. As always, and rightly so, with Mustard being the channel that we're watching here, link down below to the original video. I got a hair on me. Where'd that go? Mustard being the ones who made this, you should go over to their channel, subscribe, and all that good stuff, because they are very, very good with videos. Very informative. Great animations as well, so definitely check that out. Also, check out Morale, my new project down below, which I'm very excited about, which I'm not going to waffle on about, but you should go and check out, because it's really, really cool.
It would have flown nearly 3 times the speed of sound and carried more than 250 passengers
Whoa.
the distance from New York to Los Angeles in under 2 hours.
Whoa.
Its development was backed by $1 billion in U.S. government funding and an army of Boeing engineers, and airlines were lining up to buy it. This would have been America's answer to Concorde.
Oh, so it wasn't actually the Concorde. This is the American Concorde. So who made the Concorde then? Let me have a quick cheeky Google here. Who made the Concorde? Let's have a look. Who made it? Oh, it was British. Was it British? I didn't think it was British. Oh, it was developed by the United Kingdom and France. Oh. Well, you learn something every day, don't you? I didn't know the Concorde was British Airways. Yeah, look at that. Bloody hell. You learn something every day.
The 1960s was a decade marked by relentless optimism for the future. Laser beams, satellites, and moon landings. This was a decade in which the world was changing quickly. In just a few short years, propeller-driven aircraft had been replaced by sleek new jetliners.
Everyone was so optimistic back then. Look at us now. We're all just miserable, aren't we? We're all miserable and pessimistic.
While this new jet age was exciting, many were expecting an even bigger leap forward. Air travel was about to get a whole lot faster. A 1950s propeller-driven airliner could take 15 hours to fly from New York to London.
15.
In the 1960s, a jet made that same flight in around 7 hours. But many were expecting that by the 1970s, supersonic transports would begin replacing jets, and they would fly 2 or even 3 times the speed of jetliners.
Wow.
That would cut a New York to London flight down to under 3 hours.
Oh my God, if only I had that when I was dating Steph back in the day, back in 2015, was when I moved over to America. The amount of times between 2013 when I met Steph and 2015 when I moved over to be with her that we flew between countries. If I could have done that in 2 to 3 hours instead of the 8, 9, 10, 11 hours that it took, oh my God, I would have loved that.
By the end of the 1970s, hundreds of these supersonic transports were expected to be flying. And nearly every major American aircraft manufacturer was dreaming up plans for them. But these were still very much just plans, because actually building a supersonic transport was an enormous challenge. The technological hurdles alone were daunting. Supersonic transports wouldn't just need to fly fast, they'd need to be economical enough for airlines to actually operate.
And cheap enough, because if they're not cheap enough, people aren't going to pay to do it, are they?
And these same airlines were already buying American-made jetliners. U.S. manufacturers had the commercial aviation market pretty much cornered. So there wasn't the will to invest the massive sums of money needed to get any of these plans off the ground. But across the Atlantic, the British and the French weren't waiting around. In 1962, the two countries announced a partnership to build Concorde. And this marked the first serious effort to actually build a supersonic airliner.
I honestly didn't know it was London and Paris. I didn't know it was America, to be honest with you. It could have been anyone, and I would have been like, oh, yeah, okay. I just don't know anything about the Concorde. But I guess it was a bit before my time, wasn't it? I was born in 1991, which makes me 32. I'm turning 33 in a couple months. And yeah, it was just one of them like, kind of things that just... My mum and dad probably spoke about it every now and again, but we never really got into it. You know, no one ever flew. Did people fly on the Concorde? I don't know if it was ever actually used, was it?
And a few months later, the Soviets also jumped into the race with their Tupolev 144. The Americans had been keeping an eye on the Concorde program well before 1962. Over the years, they watched the program transform from a concept to a serious enterprise, and that began to worry American officials. Because if the British and the French would be the first to open up the supersonic transport market and do so uncontested, well, that could seriously threaten America's lead in civil aviation. Thousands of aerospace jobs could be at stake. A future American president might one day be forced to fly around in a foreign-built supersonic transport.
Oh, you can't have that, can you? God forbid another country do something better than America and ruin their ego.
And airlines were now also beginning to show interest. Pan American World Airways, at the time the largest American international carrier, even announced its intention to buy Concordes. So, in 1963, the race was on. President Kennedy announced that the U.S. government would help fund the development of an American supersonic transport. Manufacturers were invited to participate in a design competition, which outlined an ambitious set of goals. Develop an aircraft considerably faster and larger than...
Think about going Mach 2.2 to Mach 3 during the 60s, 70s. That's mental, that, isn't it? Like, that is crazy. Like, they're only just reaching that now with certain aircraft. Like, imagine going that fast. Jeez. Disintegrate in the sky, wouldn't you?
Concorde. With economics
let me just paraphrase. This is not military. This is for passengers. Like, obviously, the military, when you sign up, when I signed up to the Royal Marines Commandos, you do understand that there's a certain aspect of risk that you're probably going to die. When you're going on holiday, you want to have a good time, not go Mach 3 in the 60s, 70s and get disintegrated in the clouds.
Comparable to regular subsonic jets. Just as ambitious were the design proposals from the three participating American manufacturers. But after years of evaluation, it was Boeing's design that was ultimately chosen in 1967. And this was Boeing's design entry, the 2707. It would fly considerably faster than Concorde, and that introduced a whole slew of technical challenges requiring some pretty radical solutions.
I mean, it's a pretty cool design, isn't it? Can we all just clap to Mustard right now? Not the food, this channel. Because their video animations are really, really good, aren't they?
Like all supersonic transports, the Boeing 2707's shape was highly streamlined. But it also featured something unheard of for a plane its size, a variable geometry wing. During landing and takeoff, the 2707's wings would be pivoted forward to allow...
It looks so front heavy though, doesn't it? It looks so front heavy. I don't know how I feel about that. Also, what are we talking with the seats in here? Is it like Ryanair? Are you basically sat on someone's lap? Or is it a bit more luxury inside? Because if it's luxury, you're paying a big sum to get on this thing, aren't you?
For lower flight speeds and increased control. During supersonic cruise, its wings would be swept back to counter the massive aerodynamic drag it would experience as it approached 3 times the speed of sound.
Pretty cool.
The 2707 would be powered by 4 turbojets fitted with afterburners. To counter the heat they generated, they were uniquely positioned under the aircraft at the rear. But this made the plane rear heavy, and that meant the 2707 needed an extra set of landing gear. Because it would cruise considerably faster than Concorde, atmospheric friction would heat the 2707's exterior to several hundred degrees Fahrenheit. temperatures hot enough to soften regular aircraft aluminum.
Oh my
So
god.
Boeing would need to build the fuselage out of titanium, with components and systems all specially designed to withstand the enormous heat.
You can already see so many red flags after watching so many military aircraft videos. There's so many red flags that are popping up with this with civilians, isn't there? Oh yeah, it's not
And
good.
it would fly much higher than a typical jet, which meant more pressurization.
Yeah.
Hence the tiny cabin windows, which were only 6 inches. Luckily for passengers, the 2707 would feature an advanced in-flight entertainment system with a cabin full of televisions. Boeing
You'd
was
hope so.
confident that the 2707 could enter service with airlines by the mid-1970s. But this plane was pushing 1960s technology way beyond its limits. It wasn't even close to being ready.
It makes you wonder, is there any idea of this happening now with the technology we got now? Because although it'd still be an absolutely bizarre idea, it's probably much more achievable now.
To start, the titanium alloy needed
Vibes.
for the 2707's airframe was expensive and difficult to work with. The swing wing mechanism was complex and enormously heavy. It wasn't going to work.
The thing is, in the 60s, they were barely making military aircraft this advanced.
And eventually, Boeing was forced back to the drawing board, designing a plane with a more conventional delta wing, like Concorde. But even as Boeing struggled to work through its massive engineering hurdles, there was an even bigger problem. At supersonic speeds, aircraft generate loud sonic booms that can be heard along the entire supersonic flight path. A Boeing 2707 cruising at 60,000 feet would produce a sonic boom heard as much as 30 miles away.
That's crazy.
It was estimated that a single transcontinental flight would produce sonic booms heard by over 5 million people. And to see
Imagine if these became commonplace, just like regular aircraft, you would just hear sonic booms constantly outside. Constantly. Because think about it, every time you look in the sky, you're going to see, if you sit and look in the sky for at least 10 minutes, you're going to see a plane. Right? It's kind of obvious that you're going to see a plane. At least, I don't know, maximum sit there for 30 minutes, you're going to find a plane. And so if we replaced all the aircraft that we see in the sky with these things, right? Not only would they be going through the air quicker, so you'd probably see more of them within that time period, but they'd just be making sonic booms all the time. So if you ever went out in nature, it'd just be boom, boom, constantly. That'd be horrific, wouldn't it?
tolerant people were, in 1964, the good people of Oklahoma City were subjected to 6 months of daily sonic boom testing by the FAA and Air
Oh my
Force.
god.
With supersonic jets regularly flying overhead, booms cracked windows on 2 of the city's tallest buildings. The tests were forced to end early. More than 15,000 residents filed complaints, and a further 5,000 made claims for property damage. A full quarter of the city's residents claimed they couldn't tolerate living with the noise. The Oklahoma boom tests happened only months after America's supersonic effort was announced, but it was one of the many warning signs that officials seemed unwilling to acknowledge. Practical realities were put on hold because the competitiveness of America's aviation industry and national pride remained at stake.
It makes you wonder how high an aircraft has to be in the sky for you to not hear a sonic boom directly above you. Now, they said that you could hear a sonic boom 30 miles. 30 miles. And so, if you have to be upwards of 30 miles in the air, it's not going to work, is it? You're going to be in space. You're going to be in space. How high up is 30 miles? Is that in the stratosphere? Let's have a look. How tall is the stratosphere? Near the equator, the lower edge of the stratosphere is as high as 20 kilometers or 12 miles. Yeah, that's nuts. Question is, where would you be? So miles right here. You would be on the edge of the mesosphere, which is basically absolutely in space at this point. For you to not hear a sonic boom. Now, I do wonder if the lack of oxygen would make that 30 miles a little bit less, and so the less oxygen, less sound that's traveling. Maybe I'm not a physicist, so I don't know these things. And so maybe you could mitigate that down to like 25 miles and stuff, but it's still high up. And it would have to. You wouldn't be able to have sonic booms every 2 seconds, would you?
But as the 1960s wore on, the program was plagued by technical setbacks. The ambitious program requirements were not being met, and an anti-SST movement had grown from a handful of concerned citizens into a major national coalition of environmental organizations.
Yeah.
Growing public opposition to sonic booms had spread to other kinds of fears. Some worried that hundreds of supersonic airliners flying at high altitudes would emit enough nitrogen oxide to destroy the ozone layer.
Well, it's not only that. Think about, okay, I've been talking about hearing the sonic boom, right, as a human. But think about the wildlife, like the dispersion of wildlife and how it would change the... So let's talk from a perspective of birds migration and even like herds in North America, because they're like the ones that I kind of know a little bit more about. Bird migrations, like there's certain birds that will migrate from here where I live all the way down to South Africa, right? And so what would that trajectory look like if there was sonic booms, because it's constantly scaring the birds and making them move in different directions? How long does it change that migration from, I don't know how many months it is, to not at all, because it just takes too long? And like think about the movement of herds and deer population in North America. Like they have a pattern, right? Throughout the winter, they'll go a little bit further south. Throughout the summer, they'll go back up. And obviously, the more that humans interact with them animals, the more it kind of changes that. It doesn't impact it enough for it to lower the population, because I don't know if people know, in North America, there is a overpopulation of deer because of, and we're getting into big things here, but because of the eradication of bigger predators. You know, to some extent, there's still a lot of big predators up there. But you get what I'm saying. What does that look like if there's constant sonic booms? Because deer are very alert and they'll move a lot. Does that push them more into cities where it's a bit more compact, where you might not hear them booms as much? Do you know what I mean? Like, how does that affect animals constantly? It would change everything on the whole planet, wouldn't it? If you just heard them booms constantly every, like, I don't know, every 5-10 minutes you were hearing a sonic boom. Like, all the animals would move different. And if a lot of people probably know this who watch this channel, but if a lot of animals move differently, the ecosystem changes. And so think about this from a military standpoint of like survival, right? Which is something that I'm more familiar with. There was in fact, I'm going on a massive tangent here, but I hope people are okay with this. There was a very interesting experiment, I think it was in Yellowstone National Park in America, where all the waterways were eroding really quickly, and they found out it's because they eradicated wolves in that space. And so what happened was these massive herds of animals would be able to get closer and stay longer in open areas to eat a lot more foliage. So they put wolves back in, right? And because they put wolves back in, it stops these herds from being in one spot for a long time, therefore letting a bit more of the foliage grow, keeping the banks of rivers a bit more sturdy. I'm paraphrasing here and kind of summing it up really simply. Now, take that idea, but have it where there's something in the sky that's constantly scaring the animals and moving the animals. And what does that look like for the ecosystem and how it changes the vegetation on the planet and everything around it? I'm going on a massive tangent here, but it's the truth, right? That's actually really, really important. If you had a bit of land in North America, say you're living in Colorado or something like that, and let's say Alaska, because there's people up there who really do survive by going out and hunting their own food. And all of a sudden there's sonic booms every 2 seconds. And the deer that they've been hunting for the past 10 years, where they know they're going to be, they know the patterns of the movements, it completely changes. It would even like start harming people, wouldn't it? Physically.
They painted a dystopian picture of the future where exhaust gases and water vapor would cover the Earth in a permanent haze. In 1969, Nixon took over the presidency. By this point, America's Supersonic Transport program was delayed by years, its budget ballooning out of control, and the public's enthusiasm wavering. 2 comprehensive reviews commissioned by the government questioned the future viability of supersonic transports. They recommended ending public funding for the program. So now, it was on President Nixon's shoulders to make the difficult decision.
For 50 years, the United States has led the world in air transport. The decision that we announced today means that we will continue to maintain leadership in this field. The Supersonic Transport is going to be built.
By this point, many could see that the Boeing 2707's days were clearly numbered. With a worsening economic situation in the United States, the program was quickly becoming a contentious political issue. In 1971, the U.S. Senate rejected any further funding for the project, and the Boeing 2707 officially died. 2 years later, the FAA banned all civil supersonic aviation over the United States due to sonic boom concerns. This greatly impacted the sales potential of Concorde and the viability of any future supersonic transport.
Yeah, I'd love to watch the video on the actual Concorde and the story of that.
During the 1960s, many had predicted that hundreds of supersonic transports would fly the skies within the coming decades. While the Concorde flew for many years, only 14 were ever delivered to just 2 airlines. The Soviet Union's Tu-144 only flew regular passenger service for 8 months and on a single route. When the 2707 project was cancelled, the threat of foreign competition and concerns about national prestige were no longer great enough to offset political, economic, and environmental pressures.
Yeah.
The public's view of government programs and optimism over technology had waned. Over the course of the 1960s, the world had clearly changed. Thanks to Audible for sponsoring this video.
Yeah, I really like that video. I think that's pretty much it. Really like that video. It's Mustard, right? They have really, really good videos. They put a lot of effort in. Please go over to their channel, subscribe, and all that good stuff. There'll be a link down below. Very, very good videos. It's an interesting timeline there where we could have had these vehicles flying around our skies like very commonly now. And we're kind of glad that we haven't if we're going to be constantly hearing them sonic booms. Now, I get that sometimes speed and stuff like that, trying to get from here in England to America quicker would be very nice. It would. But sometimes, and I'm going to go on another tangent here, guys. As somebody who's a bit of a, how would you say it? An old-fashionist? Is that what we'd say? Let me show you a book. Let me show you a book right here. Right here. This beauty that I read every now and again. And I've read so many times. I'm going through it again. Tolkien had this idea that the advancement of technology isn't necessarily a good thing. And you can see it in his storytelling, how Saruman kind of starts to... It's a big metaphor, isn't it, about how the Industrial Revolution kind of changes the way people are and changes the landscape, and it's not a good thing. And there's a reason people feel this nostalgia to places like Hobbiton, the Shire, right? Where it's this very simplistic place where, you know, yes, it might take you a long time to get from one place to another, right? But there's something very relaxing and magical about that time of life where there isn't constant attention on our phones and all this stuff. And yes, would it be nice to be able to get from one country to another within a couple hours? Yes. But what's the detrimental part of that? Like, why is that going to benefit us? Like, it's okay to sit on a plane for a little bit longer to have less of an impact on animals and your own mental health, right? Massive tangent. There'll be I know there's a lot of military people who are big fans of Tolkien's work and have an understanding about that simple life. And the reason why I know that's the case, more about the simple life, is because there's a lot more military people who are craving that living off-grid simple life, right? Kind of stepping away from society a little bit. You get the ideas that are a bit more on the extremities of that, of like preppers and, you know, completely off-grid, self-sustaining and stuff like that, which are all in some ways beneficial. But I think that it's this like human urge to stop this craziness that we see around us, this advancement of technology, which can be great in hospitals and education and information. Brilliant, right? But sometimes it's better just to switch off and not have that crazy technology and just do things a little bit more old-fashioned. Massive tangent. People are going to look at this and be like, Luke's going crazy. Maybe I am, guys. Maybe I'm going a little bit crazy. Anyway, check out the original video down below. Check out Morale, my new business, down below as well. And other than that, I'll see you in the next video. I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.